Chapter 18. But it wasn't everyone. As well as Henry Druce, Jim Armans, Reg Seings and Dave Kershaw had made it to the university too. The absence of one was more obvious than a light from a lighthouse in the pitch black. "I have to go after him," Josephine told him. Henry stepped away as she tried to get to her feet. Paddy caught her middle. She struggled, and looked at him defiantly. "After everything we've been through, do you think that I would let you go back to Colditz Castle?" "Sure, you've broken out of it, and nearly broken out of it 3 more times." A minuet played on a concert piano came filtering through to the infirmary. "I promised Bill a broken bar," Josephine told them. She struggled against her brother, but he firmly lifted her legs and carefully folded her onto the bed again. "And you did as you promised," Druce counseled her. Paddy saw the look she gave him, of a person who absolutely trusted another person, as they had done in the field. "Not your fault if the silly bugger decided to get himself recaptured by playing the heroics," Paddy added. "Aren't we all playing the heroics?" Josephine asked. It was a fair question, which no one was prepared to answer quite then. When nobody answered her, she added, "And you're just going to let him die?" "I've been looking for him, as have Armans and Seekings. And Kershaw. There was a bombing here. He could be dead for all we know. And we have to be careful until we leave. They may be friendly here, but just one person could turn us in." He glanced back towards the door. As music drifted to a close, he took Josephine's hand. "Do rest. We are out tonight." 88,888,888. The night was wide, vast, that spread out from horizon to horizon. Leipzig had given way to farmland now, and there would be a silence that would match the vista had there not been a rhythmic, mechanical pulse around them. The 6 waited in their long, silvered grass of a meadow near Markeliberg, just south of the Leipzig ruins, the RAF's attack having recommenced and turning the city's industrial heart to pieces. Schmidt had come with them, showing them out of the university, and told them that O'Reilly had made the arrangements and Josephine had managed to balance between Paddy and Henry down steps hundreds of years old before managing herself with a crutch. Her knee throbbed, though she could feel her toes. Josephine remembered Sterling tell her how he thought he had been paralyzed on his first parachute drop when he could not get his feet to move. Where was he, Josephine thought, as they crouched in a beet field. The air was thick with the scent of damp peat and the metallic odor of cooling wreckage far away from them, but to such an extent that the smell had drifted that far out of the city. So much for preserving cultural heritage. Above them, the stars were covered periodically by cloud, and Josephine shuddered, pulling a coat she had been given around her shoulders. Behind them, more bombing, although not as intense or as frequent as the one that morning. Suddenly, blotting out part of the moon, 2 low-flying shadows crept into view. In the fields, an area was big enough for a landing. It wasn't until the distinctive, guttural thrum of Bristol Hercules engines announced the arrival of the Handley Page Halifax that Josephine realized they were really going back to London. Her heart lurched. Where was he? Was he dead? Had he been captured? The vessel that had come for them was a rugged, soot-blackened beast of the Special Duties Service, a collection vessel designed for the silent extraction of human assets from precarious circumstances. It banked, its silhouette momentarily eclipsed the moon, a leviathan descending into the makeshift flare path set up by the German resistance. They were going, then, and David Sterling was not with her. 88,888,888. Josephine sat propped against a supple crate, her bandaged leg extended, watching the resistance prepare for them to leave. What courageous people, she considered, such as Schmidt, whose wife had been sent east, for she had been Jewish. Their fight against their dictators. And O'Reilly? That man seems to have drifted into the whole of this, Paddy explained to the rest, when they were aloft. He met some Germans in Jersey, travelled to Germany with other Irishmen and got outrageously drunk, to the horror of the Germans. And now, he turns out to be a double agent in the thick of all of this chaos. And she listened to other stories, and hopes, of Seekings looking forward to gardening in his family's home, not vegetables but flowers, roses and fuchsias and chrysanthemums, and how Kershaw would get together the men from his local town to form a town band, to celebrate the music that he loved, and teach children and young people and pass on his passion. ... And you'll marry? Asked Paddy of Almonds. When the war is won, maybe, Almonds replied. A lovely, sweet girl who lives in our street. Peggy, her name is. We were sweet on each other. There was a roar of approval, of men relaxing from a mission, planning recuperation, ready to go again. For Josephine, however, the adrenaline that had sustained her through Leipzig had ebbed, leaving behind a cold, hollow space where her sense of purpose had been. You're fretting over a job you think is incomplete, Joey, Paddy counseled, as her leg began to throb. He leaned over her, his rugged form framed by the small window of the Halifax. You have done more than some British people, and it was the British nation which declared war in Germany. Josephine looked up to her brother as her face pale in the moonlight. I was a dead woman walking long before I met Hugh Dalton, Robbie. I have no home to return to, only a file in a cellar that says I ceased to exist in 1942. Nonsense, Paddy rumbled, a rare, grim spark of reassurance in his eyes. You aren't going back to a cell or a suburban semi-detached. We're heading straight to Baker Street. Every scrap of intelligence you've stitched together undercover, the troop movements, the piggyback signals, the internal rot of the German High Command, its currency. GHQ will exchange all of that for some recompense. 88,888,888. He paused, glancing toward the Halifax, at its side door tilted as the plane swung over. Strafing of anti-aircraft fire came past them as they passed over the Ruhr. Henry Druce moved toward them, his hand extended to Josephine, his presence a steady, unspoken anchor. She took it, and stopped the mental flagellation regarding Sterling. Paddy added, his tone shifting to something more dismissive, more final. It was your mission to extract him, yes. A neat, tactical objective on a piece of parchment. But David has always had a peculiar genius for self-sabotage and recklessness. Just ask anyone in North Africa in 1941. He didn't just fall back into the hands of the enemy, he walked back into the cage because he couldn't bear a world where he wasn't the centerpiece of the drama. He's back in Colditz, Robbie, Josephine whispered, disbelievingly, leaning into Henry's arm. When did you know this? Schmidt just told me, before we took off. Paddy Mayne told his sister. He was under a death sentence. Josephine replied, angrily. I finished prom off, if that's what you mean. Schmidt told me O'Reilly told him that Reinhold Eggers has been reinstated. He's alive? You know Eggers is a reasonable man, you told me that. Henry encouraged, gently. He believed the prisoners when they told him that they thought the German resistance attack was an attack on them personally and took steps to defend themselves. We're going back to see if we can get him out. Good, agreed Josephine. How long will it take to debrief to Dalton, or Clark? Not you. Almonds, Kershaw, seeking's a broken bar. He nodded to the SAS men, and another to make 4. He looked back to Josephine. You and me and Captain Druce here are going back to London. Josephine shook her head and made to argue, but Henry touched her arm again. Galitzine has it all under control, he told her. Josephine looked at Druce. Their scramble through France, they're rubbing the life back into their freezing bodies on a mountain south of Strasbourg. They were a unit, and there was no breaking the bond. There has been a lot of chinwag GHQ side, Druce continued. But, you know how the prince is. He and Eric, Brian and Chris are broken bar. There's a plan to go off to do what you want done. Find, he told her, emphatically, what happened to our stick, the so who had been controlled by Mansour to a grisly fate under the umbrella of the big landing. If anyone can capture the bastards before they can scurry for holes in the earth, it'll be them. And Sterling? Someone will get him out. Or he will get himself out. Maybe even on a home run as we speak. Paddy dismissed, hating his former CO for speaking about his sister in such a crude way. If he's in Colditz with Eggers as commandant again, he's where he feels most like a legend. Paddy continued, he got himself recaptured by playing the hero when the script didn't call for one. You did your job, but he tried to do a number on Joyce. And Henry's arm tightened around Josephine's hand as Paddy told his sister the little detail she missed in St. Thomas's Cathedral. 88,888,888. The Phantom Major found himself a prisoner once more, unloaded at Colditz. Having been called out by William Joyce, he was bundled into the back of a Mercedes and dumped unceremoniously into the prisoners' courtyard along with two other prisoners, Brown and Williams, who had miraculously made their way out of an Italian POW camp, not Garvey. David Sterling had established that, and got as far as Leipzig, though they had been intending to go northwest. The lieutenants had surrendered through hunger, and had risked imprisonment, but their complaints had been directed not at the Reich Guards but at the stay-put order, which they had defied and had escaped. If you disobeyed a direct order giving way to sense, then I believe you, Sterling told the astonished men in discovering who they were sharing prison transport with. They had been in 22 SAS, which had pleased him to discover, that the regiment he had founded had been spreading its wings all over Europe.